pledge my service forever.
Hey there, my crack-whipping, vampire-slaying aficionados. Today we're diving headfirst into the mist-shrouded, bat-infested world of Castlevania, where the dress code strictly enforces capes and the main course is always bloody rare. In a land where the night is filled with more than just bad dreams, we explore a game that didn't just set the bar for action platformers, but pole vaulted over it with a garlic necklace on. Grab your holy water and tighten your whip handles. We're about to unravel the mysteries of a game that dared to ask, "What is a man?" and answered with a miserable little pile of secrets. In the mid-1980s, the gaming world was about to be changed forever by a team of developers at Konami who were brainstorming their next big hit. Inspired by the universal appeal of horror movies and gothic literature, they set out to create a game that would send shivers down the spines of players, while also challenging their reflexes and minds. Enter Castlevania, a game that would soon become a cornerstone of the action platformer genre. The development of Castlevania was spearheaded by Hitoshi Akamatsu, who viewed video games as a form of cinematic experience. He aimed to give players the feeling of starring in their own horror movie. This vision was quite ambitious at the time, considering the technical limitations of the Nintendo Entertainment System. The team had to be creative to bring the gothic atmosphere of Castlevania to life. They utilized the console's limited color palette and sound capabilities to create a game world that was both eerie and immersive, proving that limitations can indeed breed innovation. One of the most iconic aspects of Castlevania is its music. The soundtrack, composed by Kinuyo Yamashita and Sato Terashima, was revolutionary for its time. The composers managed to create a hauntingly beautiful score that perfectly complemented the game's atmosphere using the NES's audio hardware in ways that had never been done before. The game's main theme, Vampire Killer, would go on to be one of the most recognizable pieces of video game music, setting the standard for future entries in the series. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The development team faced several challenges, from the technical limitations of the hardware to the need to balance difficulty and playability. Castlevania was designed to be challenging, but Akamatsu and his team were careful to ensure that it was never unfair. This delicate balance was achieved through meticulous level design and the placement of enemies, which required players to learn and adapt rather than to rely on brute force. Interestingly, Castlevania also reflects a bit of cultural exchange. While it was inspired by Western horror, the game was developed by a Japanese team who infused it with their own unique perspective. This cross-cultural creation not only made Castlevania stand out from other games of the time, but also contributed to its global appeal. The developers themselves remained relatively unknown for many years, as was most common in the gaming industry at the time. Credits were often not given, or developers were credited under pseudonyms. It wasn't until years later that the contributions of Akamatsu, Yamashita, Terashima, and the rest of the team were fully recognized and celebrated by the gaming community. But now let's dive into the story behind Castlevania. In the shadowy corridors, the players don the mantle of Simon Belmont, a whip-wielding vampire hunter with a lineage as storied as the castle he seeks to purge. Armed with the legendary Vampire Killer Whip, Simon's quest is not just a fight for survival, but a battle to end the reign of the infamous Count Dracula. But Dracula isn't your run-of-the-mill villain. He's a creature of the night with a penchant for resurrection, ensuring that the Belmont family's fight is never truly over. Simon Belmont's character was more than just a pixelated protagonist. He was a harbinger of the complex narratives that video games could offer. With a whip in hand and an arsenal of mystical sub-weapons at his disposal, Simon's gameplay mechanics introduced players to a new level of strategy and skill. Whether it was timing the perfect whip crack or choosing the right moment to deploy a holy water bottle, playing as Simon required both brains and brawn. But Simon wasn't alone in his quest. The game introduced players to a cast of characters that have since become iconic in the gaming world, from the helpful yet mysterious merchant who could appear to offer goods and advice, to the lesser enemies that roam the halls of Dracula's castle. Each character added depth and challenge to the game. It was this rich tapestry of characters and lore that set the stage for the generations-long saga that Castlevania series would become. The story of Castlevania was groundbreaking for its time, weaving a narrative that was both dark and compelling. It wasn't just about defeating enemies and progressing through levels. It was a tale of heroism, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle against darkness. This narrative depth was a significant departure from the simpler plots common in video games of the era, offering players not just a game to play, but a story to experience. Yet, the true genius of Castlevania's story and characters lies in how they were integrated into the gameplay. Each level, enemy, and item in the game was imbued with lore, making the act of playing an act of storytelling. The game's gothic atmosphere was not just a backdrop, but a character in its own right, setting a mood that would captivate players and draw them deeper into the world of Castlevania. The impact of Simon Belmont and the cast of Castlevania on gaming cannot be overstated. They were among the first to show that video game characters could be more than just avatars for players. They could be heroes of stories worth telling. This narrative-driven approach to game design would inspire countless developers and games in the years to come, proving that video games could be a medium for storytelling as rich and engaging as any book or film. Navigating the perilous halls of Dracula's castle in Castlevania wasn't just about mastering the whip or hoarding garlic. It was a dance with death where every leap, duck, and dodge could be your last. The game's gameplay mechanics were a blend of precision platforming and strategic combat that demanded players not just to react, but anticipate. Let's sink our teeth into the juicy details of what made Castlevania's gameplay stand out in the buffet of 80s video games. This game wasn't just about moving from left to right. Oh no, it was about navigating the labyrinth castle filled with traps, gaps, and platforms that seemed to have been designed by a sadistic architect with a deep-seated hatred for vampire hunters. This required not just good reflexes, but the foresight to know when to jump, whip, or stand still and pray. It was this demanding nature that made each successful leap feel like a triumph against the forces of evil and gravity. But what's a vampire hunter without his arsenal? Simon Belmont's primary weapon, the vampire killer whip, wasn't just for show. It was a versatile tool for both offense and defense, capable of dispatching enemies from a safe distance or breaking open walls to reveal hidden items. However, the whip alone wasn't enough to survive the horrors of Castlevania. Enter the sub-weapons: holy water, throwing knives, boomerangs, and more, each with its own strategic use. Choosing the right sub-weapon for the situation was crucial, as they could mean the difference between victory and becoming Dracula's next appetizer. The game also introduced an innovative item system, using hearts as currency for sub-weapons usage, adding a layer of resource management to the gameplay. Hearts, along with power-ups and health items, were cleverly hidden throughout each level, encouraging exploration and rewarding keen-eyed players. This system added depth to the gameplay, forcing players to weigh the benefits of exploration against the risks of the unknown. Castlevania's level design deserves a special mention here. Each level was a masterpiece of mood setting, from the foreboding entrance hall to the eerie clock tower, all culminating in Dracula's lair. But these weren't just pretty backdrops. They were battlegrounds that tested every skill players had learned. Enemy placements were meticulously planned to challenge players, with each level introducing new threats that required different strategies to overcome. This not only kept the gameplay fresh, but also ramped up the difficulty in a way that felt natural and rewarding. Now let's crack open the coffin on some trivia that just might raise a few eyebrows. Did you know that Castlevania was originally released in Japan under a different name? That's right, it was called Okumajo Dracula, which roughly translates to Demon Castle Dracula. The name change for Western audiences was likely due to the difficulty of pronunciation and to give it a more marketable appeal overseas. But let's be honest, Castlevania does have a ring to it, doesn't it? Throughout the game, players can break certain walls to reveal hidden items, including chunks of meat that restore health. It's a bizarre concept, right? Why would there be perfectly good, albeit slightly wall-flavored meat hidden in the castle? The answer lies within the game's design philosophy. The developers wanted to encourage exploration and reward players for their curiosity. So, next time you chomp down on some wall meat, remember, it's not just a health boost. It's a nod to the explorative spirit of gaming. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Castlevania was one of the first games to introduce a boss rush mode? In the final stages, players face off against a gauntlet of previously defeated bosses before the final showdown with Dracula. This was a novel concept at the time and has since become a staple in many action and platforming games. It's like the developers were saying, "Oh, you thought you were done? Think again." Lastly, an unknown fact that even the most die-hard fans might not know, Castlevania was almost a completely different game. In early development, there were discussions about making it a time travel adventure, with players visiting different historical periods to battle Dracula. While this concept was eventually scrapped, it's fascinating to think about how different Castlevania could have been. Imagine Simon Belmont whipping his way through ancient Egypt or the Wild West. Now, that's a game I think I'd like to see. When Castlevania first whipped its way into the scene in 1986, it was met with critical acclaim and commercial success. It wasn't just the challenging gameplay or the gothic atmosphere that captivated players. It was the feeling of embarking on a grand adventure. The game sold impressively, cementing its place in the pantheon of NES classics. But the true measure of its success isn't just in units sold, it's in the lasting impact it had on the gaming landscape. The cultural impact of Castlevania extends far beyond the confines of the gaming world. It has inspired a plethora of media, from comics to novels, and even an acclaimed animated series on Netflix that delves deep into the lore of the Belmont clan and their eternal struggle against Dracula. This adaptation in particular has introduced the story of Castlevania to a new generation, proving that the game's themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the battle against darkness are as relevant today as they were in the 1980s. Moreover, Castlevania has left an indelible mark on the video game industry through its influence on subsequent games and genres. The series is often cited as the progenitor of the Metroidvania genre, a style of game design that emphasizes exploration, character progression, and backtracking within a connected world. Now, as we close the creaky coffin lid on our journey through the haunted halls of Castlevania, it's clear that this game is more than just a mere blip on the vast universe of gaming. It's a cornerstone, a masterclass in blending whip-cracking action with a story that sinks its teeth into you, refusing to let go. Castlevania has taught us with enough heart and perhaps a few hidden even the most daunting of challenges to overcome. So you're a seasoned hunter or a newcomer eager to test your mettle, remember, in the world of Castlevania, every jump, every whip crack, every meticulously timed dodge is a step towards legend. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a date with a Belmont and a castle full of unspeakable horrors. Game on, my friends, game on. If you enjoyed this look back into the history of Castlevania, click this video here to see more from the Retro Reload. And as always, thank you for watching.